Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to talk a little bit about tides, how to check the tides, where to check the tides, and also why to check the tides. So there are a few things we need for this. First of all, you will need access to some sort of a tide table, so a book like this that shows us the different times and heights of the tide, depending on where you're sailing. You will need some sort of when I say some sort of, you will need a tidal curve for the area that you're sailing in. And also to double check your results, you'll also need to back that up with some sort of an internet connection. So checking through an app or some sort of online platform to double check your findings to make sure that they are correct. And gathering information from two different sources is generally better anyway. Just a few bits of terminology, and to be clear about what we're talking about. When we talk about tides, most people think about the fact that tides go up and down in an area. So we're sitting here outside the marina office, and I can see that the boats are floating on the water, and some of them are a little bit higher than they were an hour ago, and that's because the water is coming into this area. We're in what we call a tidal area of the world. Unlike some areas like, for example, the Mediterranean, which is a non-tidal area, here on the east coast of Australia, we are in a tidal area. So the water comes up and down, mostly from the equator. If you're coming to an area and you intend to stay there for a period of time, sort of anchoring overnight, that kind of thing, you would need to make sure that you have not only enough water to stay there, but also perhaps thinking about things like how much chain you might want to let out on your anchor. The scope of chain will change and vary depending on how much water is under the boat. We are now ready to check the height of tide right at this moment, this morning, because now is the time that we'd like to go sailing. We do not currently know how much water we have available to us, so that is the purpose of checking the tide using the tidal curve. So just a little bit of basic maths that we need to think about here. Our vessel, our sailing boat, has a draft of 2.7 meters. The marina here at Manly in Brisbane, where we have our school, the lowest astronomical tide available to us here is 1.7. So in other words, there is a deficit of 1 meter that we need of tide to be able to get in and out of the marina. So that's what we need, 1 meter for the boat to actually float. We, of course, need a little bit more water than that, maybe 20 centimeters, maybe half a meter of clearance so that we can safely exit and come back to the marina. So what we're looking for really is approximately between 1 meter to 2 meters would be more than sufficient to get in and out. And we need 3 bits of data. We need the height of high water, we need the height of low water, and we need the time of that high water. If we look at our tidal book, the date today is the 5th of September. I'm going to go to the 5th of September here. I'm going to look, September, there we are, the 5th. I'm just going to circle this one to make sure that I don't lose it, especially if you're on a moving boat and things are not always clear what you're looking at. It's always good to circle the date. I'm going to look at the time now. We're just coming up to 10 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully by the time we get down to the boat, it'll probably be around about 10:30. So that's our intended time that we'd like to go out, but that will of course depend on the tide itself. We're going to look here and we're going to see that the high water today is at midday. So already in my head I'm thinking that's pretty good news because that's only a couple of hours away. It's more than likely we will have enough water, but let's just do the calculation anyway. So I'm going to write that down. I'm going to put high water time is, what did we say, 12:03, and we're going to put the height of that high water is 1.59 meters. The height of the next low water, the low water that has just gone, which was at about 5:30 this morning, is 0.3, so 30 centimeters. And now we're going to write those and apply those to our tidal curve. So tidal curve, we're going to go 1.59 is round about here. 0.3 is at the bottom somewhere. We need some sort of a straight edge, so I'm going to use my Portland plotter for this and draw the line between the two. So I'm just going to draw that line out there between the 0.3 and the 1.59, if we remember from our tidal data information sheet. And that there gives us our tidal range line. In other words, for this period that we are currently in this morning on the 5th of September, that is the range of the tide. And from this, we could in fact deduce whether we are in a spring or a neap tide period. And the easiest way to do that is to simply deduct or take away the low water from the high water. That would give us a number. And in the tide range book, sorry, in the tide book, the almanac, it would tell us whether we're in a spring period or a neap period. Sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't. The spring or the neap tide matters really mostly to tell us how fast the water is traveling during those periods. It can, in some parts of the world, also have a big to medium difference as to what part of the bell curve we use as well. So now that time of the high water we said was at 12:03. So we're going to write that in there, 12:03. We're going to go backwards by 1 hour. So that's 11:03, 10:03, 9:03. We don't need to go any further back than that because the time is currently 10 o'clock anyway. We're going to go forward by 1 hour. So that would become 13:03. 14:03, 15, and so on and so on. Maybe we'll just keep going because we're going sailing for a few hours. The tide, by the time we come back, probably will have dropped again. So we'll keep going. So 16:03, 17:03, and so on. 18:03 is the next almost low water, in fact, which is about the time we intend to come back. Now, 10 o'clock on this graph here is roughly right here. Just happens to be on the thick line, just to make my job a little bit harder. So I'm going to make sure that I can really see that line clearly. I'm going to draw all the way to the top of the bell curve there. Wherever that intersects the bell curve, we'll draw across to our tidal range line, which is over here. Nice and sort of not too thick, because obviously if we make a slightly thicker line, that changes the outcome of the tide itself. And then all the way to the top here of the tide, which is right at the top there, and that gives us 1.4 meters of tide at exactly 10 o'clock this morning. It's pretty good. Now back to our basic simple maths. 2.7 meters of boat. We have minus the 1.7 in the marina. That gives us 1 meter deficit. In other words, we need at least a meter for the boat to float. So a meter plus I would put there, that's what we need. And we have 1.4 meters, which means great, happy days. We can now leave the marina at any time from now on, obviously not leaving it too late because the tide will now fall from 12 o'clock onwards. I hope that makes sense to you. Just a very quick recap. 3 bits of information. I'm a big fan of keeping things simple. You need the height of high water, you need the height of low water to give you your range for the time you're sailing in, and you need the time of that high water. And those are the only 3 bits of information you need for your tidal curve to be able to fill that out. I hope that makes sense and I hope that's useful. The other method, if you have access to the internet or even some sort of an app, a much quicker way to do it, in fact, would be to check it online. So if we just have a look at the iPad over here, there are various different types of apps available, but I like one called Willy Weather or Wiley Weather, and that will tell us exactly what the tide is doing at this moment. So 12 minutes past 10, we just talked about before, and the tide coming up to high water here shows us that 2 meters of tide. So again, plenty of water to go out sailing. So that of course is a much quicker way to check it than everything we did before. So it's always good to have 2 different ways to check the same sort of information, and that's why we show you 2 different ways of doing it. You may notice as well that there are 2 different numbers here. We came up with 1.4 using the tidal curve and 2 meters online. The reason for that is, in fact, we're using an almanac that's a few years old. I just wanted to show you the methodology. I hope that's been useful for you guys. There will be a separate video on how to calculate the drift of the tide, the speed of the tide, and we'll get into that separately. So I hope this has been useful, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Southern Cross Yachting, Jamie speaking. Oh, Karen, yes. Hi, Karen. How's it going? Good.